Emma stood in front of the mirror in a quiet room at the back of the small country church. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the simple white dress that draped softly around her. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the wooden floor. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but even happiness, it seemed, could carry weight. As she smoothed the veil over her curls, a voice inside her whispered the doubts she'd heard too many times before. She could still hear the cautious words from her mother, the awkward silences from friends when she mentioned Daniel. "Are you sure?" they had asked gently. "You're still so young, you could have a different life." But Emma never wavered. What they saw as a limitation, she saw as a mark of survival. Daniel had lost the use of his legs in a tragic accident 3 years ago, but what he hadn't lost was his heart, his humor, his resilience. He had a way of making everyone around him feel seen, heard, and valued, something she had never truly experienced before meeting him. The first time they met was at the community library. She had knocked over a stack of books, and he had wheeled over with a smile and offered his help. That moment had led to coffee, and coffee to long walks, or rather, rolls through the park. Conversations about dreams, fears, and the kind of love that doesn't fade when things get hard. That was Daniel Brill, raw and incredibly kind. Now, as the bells began to ring and the first notes of the wedding march floated in, Emma looked at herself one last time. She wasn't nervous about marrying Daniel. She was nervous about whether the world would ever understand the kind of love they shared, one not built on fairy tales, but on strength, respect, and the quiet bravery of two people choosing each other in every moment. The music swelled gently through the old wooden pews as Emma took her first step down the aisle. Her arm looped through her father's. Guests rose to their feet, their faces glowing with anticipation. The soft rustle of fabric and the scent of lilies filled the space. Emma kept her eyes fixed on the man at the end of the aisle. Daniel, he sat calmly in his wheelchair, dressed in a sharp navy suit, his hair neatly combed, a soft smile playing on his lips. But as she drew closer, she noticed something unusual in his eyes. There was a flicker of nervous energy, something quietly electric. Then, just as she passed the halfway point, something unexpected happened. Daniel shifted in his chair and reached for the armrests with both hands. Slowly, he pushed himself up. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Emma stopped in her tracks, her heart racing, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. Daniel's arms trembled, but he stood shakily but surely on his feet. Hidden beside him, almost camouflaged by the flower arrangements, were metal bars, placed discreetly for balance and support, one foot in front of the other. He began to walk. Each step was unsteady, deliberate. His face tightened with concentration, but his eyes never left hers. It was as if time had paused. Emma felt her breath catch, the tears already gathering. This wasn't just a physical movement, it was the weight of months, maybe years, of silent struggle, a promise unspoken, an act of love louder than any words. The guests watched in stunned silence. No one reached for a phone, no one whispered. The only sound was the soft tap of Daniel's shoes on the wooden floor and the faint, steady rhythm of the music still playing in the background. Emma could feel the tears now streaming down her cheeks, but she didn't care. Her hands moved to her mouth, her heart thudding so hard she could barely think. Daniel was walking for her, for them, for love. As Daniel took another slow step forward, Emma stood frozen, overwhelmed by the moment unfolding before her. The man she loved, the man who had once told her he might never walk again, was now defying every expectation, every medical prediction, and every quiet fear he had ever confessed. She could barely see through her tears, but in her heart she saw everything. Every moment that had led to this. She remembered the night they sat under the stars in his backyard. Daniel staring at the sky while she rested her head on his shoulder. He had whispered then, "Sometimes I dream I'm running again. Then I wake up and can't feel a thing." Emma had held his hand tighter, saying nothing, because what could words do for a pain so deep? That night, she saw the vulnerability behind his strength, and now she saw the strength behind that vulnerability. All the pieces suddenly fell into place. The late-night messages that ended early, the cancelled dates where he claimed he was tired, the quiet bruises on his arms he tried to hide. It wasn't coincidence he had been preparing for this. Training in secret, falling down and getting back up, again and again, just to give her this one moment. A moment he believed she deserved, not because she asked for it, she never would, but because he wanted to walk toward her, stand with her, and show her the lengths his love could go. Emma took a shaky step forward, closing the distance between them. As Daniel reached her, his hands were trembling from the effort. She gently took them in hers, steadying him. There were no words, just the fierce, quiet connection between two hearts that had weathered so much. This wasn't about walking, it was about love's determination. It was about never giving up, even when no one believed you could do it. Looking into his eyes, Emma whispered through her tears, "You didn't have to do this." Daniel smiled softly and replied, "I know. But I wanted to. For you. For us." As Daniel stood before Emma, their hands entwined, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. The soft hum of the music faded behind the roar of emotion surging through the air. Even the priest paused for a moment, clearly moved by what had just unfolded. Daniel was standing, truly standing on his wedding day. Not out of obligation, not for show, but as a deeply personal offering of love. His legs were trembling, supported by sheer willpower and weeks, perhaps months, of quiet pain. Yet, his eyes never left hers, full of warmth and a kind of courage that stirred every heart in the room. The priest continued the ceremony, his voice quieter now, reverent, as though honoring something sacred beyond tradition. Daniel's voice shook, slightly as he began his vows, but it wasn't from fear. It was from the overwhelming truth of what he felt. He looked at Emma and said, "They told me I might never walk again. I believed them, but then I met you, and everything changed. You didn't just love me in spite of my brokenness. You helped me see that I was never broken at all. You never asked me to stand, but every day your love gave me reason to try." Emma was crying openly now, her fingers brushing away tears as she tried to respond, but her voice cracked. She took a deep breath and managed to whisper, "You were never less in my eyes. You've always stood tall, even when sitting." The guests chuckled through their tears. It was a rare kind of laughter, born of awe and affection. As the rings were exchanged and the final words were spoken, Daniel's strength began to waver. Emma saw it instantly and gently slipped her arm around him, steadying him. Together, turned to face the guests, a bride and groom bound not just by ceremony, but by something far deeper, a love that had been tested and found unshakable. And when the priest declared them husband and wife, the applause that followed wasn't just celebration. It was thunderous gratitude for witnessing something truly rare, the triumph of the human heart. The sun dipped low as the reception carried on beneath a canopy of soft light strung between trees. Laughter and gentle music floated through the evening air, but no one talked about the decorations or the cake. What everyone kept whispering about, with awe in their voices and emotion in their eyes, was Daniel's walk down the aisle. It had become more than just a moment. It was a symbol, a reminder of how far love can carry someone when nothing else seems possible. Daniel now sat in his wheelchair again, his body clearly exhausted but his smile brighter than ever. Emma was by his side, her hand never leaving his. They sat beneath the stars, a little removed from the crowd, quietly soaking in everything. She looked over at him, brushing a loose strand of hair from his forehead. "You scared me," she said softly, a playful tremble in her voice. "I thought you were going to fall." "I almost did," Daniel admitted with a gentle laugh. "About 6 times, actually, but I kept thinking, just a few more steps, just to see your face." Emma's throat tightened again. The weight of his words settled into her chest, filling her with something so pure it almost hurt. She leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. "You didn't have to prove anything to me, Daniel, not ever." "I know," he said, his voice quiet but full of meaning, "but I had to prove it to myself. I needed to know I could still give you something, that I could still rise for love, even if only for a moment." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they'd lived through, everything they'd built together, and everything still to come. Emma squeezed his hand, and he squeezed back. People came to weddings expecting fairy tales. But this was something better. It was real, it was brave, and it left everyone who witnessed it with a renewed belief in what love, courage, and quiet devotion could do. Under the soft starlight, Emma whispered, "You walked to me today, and for the rest of our lives, we'll walk together."